Hello and welcome to the Mission-Led Content, Business and Life podcast. I'm getting used to saying that now. A space for tired but inspired solo business owners who want to have real and meaningful conversations. Welcome back today to my mini-series in the Ideal Client. And we're going to dive in right now to the whole concept of the Ideal Client avatar. Now, love it or hate it, the Ideal Client avatar is something that you probably have come across if you've been in the digital online space for a while. It's the idea that we create a person. So we write down the demographics of this person, we write down the psychographics of this person. We want to know exactly who they are. And so we can use that person to plan our marketing around. What is this person like? Where do they live? How old are they? What's their marital status? Do they have pets? And you can see that for some people, this is a really positive thing. And I'll be honest, I always found it. In fact, I found it more problematic as I've gone forward in time. At the beginning, I found it such a brilliant way of just grabbing onto something, having something to hook onto. Having something to be able to sit there and just imagine this person and like, okay, I know who I'm talking to, rather than feeling like I had to please everybody. But some people, because really what you're doing is you're making assumptions and you're putting people in boxes and you're excluding a lot of other types of people. For example, if you give your ideal client a name, my ideal client is called Claire, by the way. And if you give your ideal client a name, are you discriminating against everyone else who doesn't have that name? You know, these are things you've got to think about. So obviously that's not quite realistic. But, you know, when you start to get too specific, if you get really specific on your ideal client avatar, and then you go and create content that is directly feeding into some of those attributes. So if, for example, you've put them as married, but they might not be, you might be talking to people who might have various statuses, and in there's all sorts of ways people can be connected together in today's society. Marriage is not necessarily top of the agenda, and so you may have said they're married, and so you may mention things like husband or wife, and you may worry that you're excluding people. So there's a couple of things to say on that. The first thing is having an avatar and creating this imaginary person, although it can be based on somebody in real life that you've worked with, is purely for your purposes to channel, and I use that word mindfully. What I mean by channel is it's nothing divine. It's that channeling between the connection between you and the person that you want to work with. It's creating this image. You don't have to getting specific on whether they're married or whether they have kids or what sort of house they live in. You can do that if you want, if it helps your imagination to create that person. But obviously when you're creating content and you're creating products and services for them, you have to be mindful that that's not the only person. But we've all got common sense here. We know that. So just if you can lean into this activity, I invite you to lean into creating an avatar. List those demographics. What would that person look like? Now, that doesn't mean that you're excluding anybody else. It doesn't have to mean that you're excluding anyone else unless you take that avatar and make it literal. Like I said, no one else is allowed to be called Claire. So you have the right, you have the ability to do this however you choose and to engage with this however you choose. Like I said in the introduction to the Ideal Client work, this is your journey and you have to trust your instincts. Some people just cannot buy into this process. I invite you to try it. A, if you haven't done it before, or B, if you haven't done it for a while, and it can be a really interesting activity just to bring that connection and bring some awareness and bring some playfulness. Let's look at this as play. So I'm going to list off the headlines of my ideal client, and I'm going to tell you what I do with her. So that's what I'm going to do, and then I'm just going to invite you to do the same. So my ideal client is Claire. Meet Claire. She's 52. She is married. She has 2 kids that are nearly out the house. She has her own house. She does have elderly parents that she has to look after as well. She has a dog. She works as a trauma therapist. She used to be in the NHS for years, but had to leave for her own mental health. She's really good at her job and has well-established network of returning customers and referrals. But she hates social media and she reluctantly uses it to work and to make personal connections, but she dislikes how she finds herself sucked into a time vortex, and it now seems to be full of dickheads. That's actually what I wrote. Claire struggles to create content on social media because she worries about what people think of her, especially ex-colleagues. Claire worries about charging for her services, as fundamentally she believes that the work she does should be available to everyone. Claire wants to make more consistent money, but she really wants to feel she is helped. But she wants to make more consistent money, but she really wants to feel that she's helping people. So money is a factor, but money without that sense of feeling like she wouldn't sacrifice it working for the wrong people, or people who don't really need her help, or charging unnecessary for things that, keeping on working with people that don't need you anymore. She's frustrated with the poor quality of support that's widely available. She loves a good Netflix drama. She listens to music and audiobooks and podcasts that are usually around self-help, sociology, psychology, society stuff, but wishes she could read more physical books and more fiction books, but alas, time is short. I probably, as I'm reading this, would like to say that she's neurodiverse as well. That isn't language that I put in there, but would have put in there when I did this. So this is, as I'm doing this, I'm aware that that's something that I feel is really important. And I guess that's the point of this, is that some of those things have been added more recently, things about the being frustrated with the quality of support that's out there, struggling to charge for what they do because they used to work in public services. That is because more and more of the conversations, more and more of the clients I'm having fit that fits that bill, and I'm really enjoying that. So although I've not changed, nobody would even notice that externally I've changed my ideal client, because I'm not suddenly saying, right, that's it, I'm now working with only people who have left the NHS. But my content is informed and my mission is informed. The way I feel about my business is informed. The conversations I have are informed. The things I read, the things I listen to, they're all informed because I'm interested in this. I'm motivated by it. I really, I care from a personal level, and this is going into some detail about myself. I really do care about our public services, and as someone who has worked in them before, who has a husband who works in mental health at the moment, but he's worked in all sorts of types of care over the last 20 years, my mum as well, I know a lot of, and I'm connected to, I was going to call it the industry, but the sector, and a lot of my clients are, and so a lot of my clients have been or work within it. Even if they don't work on the outside of it, they work within it in different ways. And I really care about that. And I really see that there's this huge gap as our services are more and more privatised and more taken away from us, physically taken away from us. And so I really would love the more people I can work with who actually want to make a genuine change in that industry, not just with the work they do, but with the message, becoming advocates for the people who need advocating against. Fun fact, I actually won an award once for advocating for young people, and I think that sense of helping people to be heard with their messages that need bigger platforms is something that really motivates me. So I've added that in, not because every single person that I love working with has to come from the NHS or teaching or accounts or something. They have to have been involved in public services. I mean, I could niche to that. There's nothing to say I couldn't, but I don't want to, because there are too many people who do not have that background that I also love working with. But it's something that is really interesting me now, and that is core, the concept of public services living in the UK and the NHS and stuff. That is a core sense of identity for me, sense of like national identity, really, like the services that we provide and how we look after those people who need it here. And so although I work in I don't work anywhere near that industry myself anymore, it makes me feel good to be part of it. I'm not advertising that I do that, like I say, but just by having it inform what I read, what I watch, the conversations I have, some of the more nuanced content that I might put out that isn't just about, the podcast, for example. This podcast has been born from that, from the conversations that I'm having with my actual clients, that I would love my ideal clients to hear these conversations, because I want them to hear how powerful these are and how many shifts I help these people take who may have blocks around charging for their services, or may have blocks around advertising or speaking up about something that that can be improved, and they see a way to improve it. So that is why Claire has had the fundamental change. She never used to be in the NHS, but I changed her because it's what I wanted to focus on. So the thing is with this avatar is just like anything else in marketing. It doesn't work if you create this person, this imaginary or real person. This is an imaginary person. I felt it was better for me to create like things that things like her age. To me, I tend to get a lot of people who are a bit older than me, and it just seems to be the way it is. So it made sense to put that age, because that just seems to be who I work with more than any other factor. But I have clients who are in their 20s. It doesn't mean, but if I'm talking to the majority of my audience, people who are experiencing, I don't talk about young children anymore, because I don't have young children. I talk about more likely like the challenges of, in fact I talk about parenting quite a lot less generally, because of the fact that my children is different when they're babies, and their whole identity is wrapped up in you as their parent, and you're their caregiver, but they take on their own identities, and the parts of that I share about my children are very much checked in with what my children want to do, and my teenager does not want to be anywhere near any of it. So apart from when she did open a TikTok shop once, she did have a different perspective then. But the TikTok shop's still open. We're just making sure she can get paid from it first before we carry on. But the point that I'm making here is that we can evolve our ideal client avatar. So it is a good exercise. It is a playful exercise. It is an exercise that might just get you to connect and think about who these people are. And if, for example, you're thinking about who are the people I work with the most, and you start to think, oh my gosh, I'm actually working with this group of people who have this particular values, or have, I haven't even mentioned values on this list. It could have been absolutely exhaustive, but I didn't want to make it exhaustive. It was just about the things that show up to me initially. But something could show up and you think, oh my gosh, I'm attracting the wrong type of people. Maybe you're like, I'm attracting people that can't afford to pay me, for example. That often happens in this process. So if you either start by thinking of your most common client, or the clients who you absolutely adore when they walk in the room, whether that's online, on a phone, or offline, when you're physically in a space together, you just know, so it's clicked. Think of that person, or like I did, take those attributes, the conversations you want to have, the work you want to do, and think about that, and then the more commonalities. I think if I'm to add to this, which I think I'm going to now actually, because I realise I haven't put those values in, I may say that their values are something around innovation and doing things better, so improving lives of others, building good relationships, because that's one of my big values, and compassion, because the world needs more compassion. So if I'm going to work now, I've done value work with my clients. We do it in the academy, and I know some of them have those words, some of them don't. It's not like I'm like, if those aren't your top 3 values, I'm not working with you. But it allows me to lean more into talking about that, so that I make sure that the content that I write and that I create connects. So because they certainly won't not have those values. If they don't have those values, then I do not want to work with them. So the last thing I want to say, after I've shared my avatar and gone on a little rant about her, is I know Claire well enough, even though, as I say, every time I add and I adapt her, I feel a connection to Claire. She's like the Frankenstein. I should have just changed her name to Frankenstein. She's like the Frankenstein of all the best things about my clients. I mean, I should have also said she loves to laugh. She's quite a giggly, childish personality, perhaps, because that's, you know, so much of my time spent with clients is spent laughing. You know, that's, and maybe that she's done enough work on herself that she's quite happy to cry, not happy to cry, you know what I mean? She's able to express her emotions, things like that. I think I can definitely add to that, and that's the point. This is constantly evolving, but I know her well enough. I know the things that happen to you, all the bits in between those lines I know in my soul. And so every time I do write content, and this is an actual thing I do, I think to myself, sometimes I close my eyes and I need a moment, I need 30 seconds, sometimes I meditate, sometimes I do yoga. More often though, or go for a walk, more often I just sit and think, what does she need to know right now? What can I do today to help? And because I'm so emotionally connected to that person, regardless of what, you know, me adding those values now does not mean that I wasn't connected to that before. I intimately know this person. And so I can connect on that human level, and I can write, I can create, I can have a conversation that means something to both me and to Claire.